Okay, so let's jump right in. Imagine you're a top consultant, and you've just been hired by Tate Pharmaceuticals. Now, these guys are a giant, a real leader in their field, but something is seriously wrong. Their number one, star product, is suddenly bleeding profit, and they have no idea why. So our job? We're going to crack this case. Today, we're going to break down exactly how a top consulting firm would tackle this classic market leader's dilemma.
So, here's our game plan, how we're going to structure our thinking to solve Tate's problem. First, we'll get our hands around the core issue, what we're calling the profit paradox. Then we're going to size the battlefield. Understand the stakes. Third, we'll perform an anatomy of the threat to find out what's really going on. After that, we'll lay out all of Tate's strategic options. And finally, we'll step back and talk about the key consulting methods we use throughout this whole exercise. All right, first up, Section 1, the profit paradox. You see, on the surface, Tate Pharmaceuticals looks like the picture of health. But if you look a little closer, hidden right inside their success, there's this puzzle that's threatening to unravel everything. And this right here is the central question. This is the paradox that's keeping the entire C-suite up at night. I mean, think about it. Sales are climbing, their market share is totally stable, so why on earth are profits just falling off a cliff? It's a classic trap, really. The top-line numbers look fantastic, but they're hiding this critical weakness on the bottom line that could absolutely cripple the company if they don't solve it.
And the problem is all centered on their crown jewel, Rumax 66. Look, this isn't just a drug for them. It's the market-leading treatment for a specific kind of knee arthritis. They basically own this space. But the profit from their number one product is just eroding. This isn't just some line item on a spreadsheet. This is a direct threat to their market dominance. It's the engine that funds their entire R&D pipeline.
Okay, Section 2. To really get a handle on the threat, we first have to understand the territory. A consultant never works in a vacuum. The first thing you do is map out the total addressable market. Let's size the battlefield. Our calculation starts at the very top of the funnel, the entire U.S. population, about 300 million people. We've gone ahead and segmented this by age, which is, the first critical step to zero in on our actual potential customers. This isn't just about counting people. It's the beginning of understanding the demographic drivers of the entire business.
So by applying the arthritis prevalence rate to each of those age groups, we start to narrow the field. And, no surprise here, the rate climbs pretty steeply with age. After we run the numbers, we land on our U.S. market, just over 20 million people. This is Tate's core domestic battleground, the whole foundation of their current revenue. Knowing this number lets them calculate their market share with precision and model the financial impact of even tiny shifts in demand.
But here's where things get really interesting, where the whole perspective just shifts dramatically. That 20 million person U.S. market, turns out, it's only 20% of the total global opportunity. This single piece of data is absolutely crucial. It tells us that any long-term strategy for Tate has to have a global dimension. It shows both a risk, hello, international competitors, and a massive, massive opportunity for growth if they can expand effectively.
So, the math from here is pretty straightforward, right? If 20 million is 20%, the total prize is 5 times bigger. We arrive at a massive global market of 100 million potential patients. Let that sink in. This isn't just a market, it's an empire, and that is exactly what's at stake here. The decisions Tate makes next won't just affect their U.S. business, they're going to determine their place in this 100 million person global arena.
Okay, Section 3. So, we've established the market is huge, but that doesn't solve our profit paradox, does it? So now we pivot from how big to why. It's time to conduct an anatomy of the threat and find the real story hiding behind these numbers.
The first diagnosis, well, it's almost too easy. Why are profits down? Well, because costs are up. Raw ingredients, energy, logistics, it's an industry-wide squeeze. It would be really easy to just look at this and say, hey, it's a macro trend, nothing we can do. But, well, that's the lazy answer, and it's almost never the full picture.
Because a good consultant never, ever stops at the first answer. That industry-wide pressure is definitely real, but it's not the whole story. It's actually masking a much more specific, much more dangerous threat that is aimed directly at Tate and its competitors. The real storm is still just gathering on the horizon. And here it is. This competitive matrix just lays the threat bare. Look at Tate's Ruma 66. $5 a dose, a couple of side effects, 50% market share. Solid. The competitors are weaker. But then, look at that bottom row. Drug 3. It's pending FDA approval. It costs less than half as much, with 0 reported side effects. This isn't just a competitor. This is an extinction-level event for Ruma 66.
Section 4. So how do you respond to a literal market killer? This is where strategy becomes absolutely paramount. We can't just throw ideas at the wall. We need a structured approach. Consultants use a principle called MEIS. It stands for mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. It's really just a fancy way of saying every option is distinct, and together they cover all the possibilities. So let's build that framework.
A really great way to structure these options is to separate them by the time horizon. So first, what are the immediate reactive moves Tate can make in the short term, just to defend its position? And then second, what are the more fundamental, proactive strategies it can pursue for the long term? This makes sure we're considering both defense and offense.
So looking at the short-term options, they kind of fall into a few buckets. There's the fight bucket, use regulatory hurdles, start a price war to bleed the newcomer. There's fortify, double down on marketing, use your scale to lock in those distributor relationships. There's flee, expand like crazy into new markets to try and outrun the threat. And finally, you've got the classic acquire move. If you can't beat them, buy them. Neutralize the threat by bringing it in-house.
Now, in the long term, the choices become truly profound. It's a massive fork in the road. Path 1 is innovate. Double down on R&D, re-engineer Room 66, and fight fire with fire by creating an even better product. Path 2 is the complete opposite. Divest. Acknowledge the battlefield has changed, sell the whole division while it's still valuable, and redeploy that capital to go win a different war. I mean, this is a legacy-defining decision. Now for our last section, let's just pull the camera back for a minute. While the specific recommendation for Tate is obviously important, what's even more valuable for us is understanding the method we use to get here. Because this case isn't just about pharmaceuticals, it's about a repeatable process for strategic problem solving.
So what's the real takeaway here? It's the process. We didn't jump to conclusions, right? We started by structuring the problem, then we sized the market. Then we identified the real threat, not just the obvious one. And only then did we systematically explore every single option. This methodical journey, from ambiguity to data to structure to options, that, right there, is the essence of strategy. It's how you turn raw information into a powerful decision.
And so we end with a fundamental question that Tate's case forces us to ask, a question every market leader eventually has to face. When a cheaper, better, faster disruptor shows up on your turf, what do you do? Do you fight? Do you acquire? Or do you retreat to fight another day? There's no single right answer, but that is the billion-dollar question at the very heart of strategy.